I have the best job in the world. There's no doubt about that. I get to go fishing all the time. I get to make videos about fishing. I get to take pictures about fishing. My whole life revolves around fishing. But how did I get this job and how did I get involved in the fishing industry? A few of you have asked me, so I thought I'd tell you my story. Now, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Now, it's a video that I probably should have made a long time ago about how I got into the fishing industry, how I ended up working in the fishing industry, how I ended up getting this amazing job. It's a job that people could only dream of. I get to film and fish with the best anglers in the world, let's be honest. You know, I've had the privilege of working with Alan Scott, Steve Ringer, Will Raisin, Lee Kerry, Rob Wotton, Mick Viles. The list goes on. I've filmed with just about everybody. Over the years, and it is the job that people could only dream of. I can see young anglers all the time. I'm like, I'd love to do your job. What is the secret behind it? So I thought, do you know what? It's been a long time coming, this video, and I thought I'm going to do it. So make yourself a brew, get sat down, and I'll explain how I did it, what I actually went through to get the job, or jobs, because I've had 3 jobs now in the industry, but more about that later. So it's going to be quite a long video. This it's going to be a bit of just me chattering really, but it's something that I wanted to put out there on video because there's a lot of people who probably look on in a bit of envy, maybe a bit of jealousy, perhaps even, or just actually the will of like wanting to have a go themselves. So I thought it's a great video to do. It's one that I've been meaning to do for ages, and someone asked me the other day about how I got my job, and I thought, you know, that's the perfect spur on to do it. So let's get into some detail about how my journey began and lead up to the current day of where we are now. Okay, so my journey began in 2010, but I have to take the clock back a bit further than that, because as much as I started in 2010, I also probably made my first inroads into getting into the industry a little bit before that. Now, I first got into the magazines when I was 19, so I got a feature in the Angler's Mail with Ian Chapman, so thank you very much to Ian, who probably gave me my first sort of break, if you like. He did some features with me in the early days. We did one on the Staney. In fact, I've got it here, look at this. Teenage Dirtbags, hope you can see that in the reflection there. And it was just, it was the time when the magazines and the Angling Times and the Angler's Mail were so popular. And I knew that it was almost like a big thing, wasn't it? If you got into a magazine or you got into one of the papers or whatever, you'd not made it, but you're sort of starting to make a name for yourself. And I think it was Mark Wainwright, who was the captain of Ossett at the time, who I was fishing for, Garblino Ossett, had been out with Ian Chapman and sort of put my name forward as someone who'd probably be good for features. And we did a few. We did quite a few, actually. We did one on the Aaron Calder, we did one on the Staney, we did one at the Oaks. But what it was, I was actually writing the words myself. So Ian would come and take the pictures, and then I'd do the writing. And that was sort of my inroads into doing it. At the same time, I was doing quite a popular blog, actually. Now, it seems like nowadays everyone's got a blog or a Facebook profile or whatever, but if you think about 2007, 2006, 2008, that kind of era, it was quite a new thing still. And what actually happened was, and this is a recurring theme throughout this video, Tom Scoley, who's a great friend of mine, actually came to me when I was only young and said, look, I've got a website that I'm running with this other chap, and I'm looking for some regular bloggers. And I think it was me, Matt Godfrey, Stuart Lister and Tom as like the regular 4. And I started doing a weekly blog, and it actually, it was popular. I think a lot of people probably read it. I used to get plenty of comments about it, like on the bank. Bear in mind, Facebook wasn't like it is now. So people had like a real thirst for information, really. I was doing this blog on fishing for fun, and what it actually did for me was give me that I was writing. I was doing 2,000 words every single week, and when I look back now, grammatically they were off. You know, it wasn't ready to go into print or anything, but with a few tweaks, like, people could see that I was probably getting somewhere with it, and that continued for probably 2 years, and I had some great wins while I was doing that blog. Actually, I was looking through it a while ago, and it's cool to see. And I was very raw and a young angler who was mad keen. And obviously I was doing this for Tom, but more importantly, I wasn't letting him down. I was making sure I was hitting my deadlines. I was getting the content out there. I was making sure it wasn't so much about pictures back then, but I always made sure I had the content for Tom, which I think probably stood me in good stead. And basically, I went away. I was an electrician at the time. I used to work with my dad. My dad's a joiner. We used to do loft conversions, that kind of thing. Just one day, I did a feature with John Arthur and Tom. We drove all the way down to Viaduct, all three of us in John's car. Basically, we'd booked a feature in with me, or they'd booked a feature in with me. It was snowing up north, so we couldn't actually get out. And John actually, in his crazy way, said, "Why don't we go down to Viaduct? You drive down to ours and we'll go down to Viaduct." Of course, I was young and unattached back then, so yeah, why not? So we went all the way down to Viaduct, got a cool feature, and I think it probably put me in John's mind and Tom's mind as someone who had a bit of potential for the future and someone who was willing to put themselves out of probably the comfort zone a little bit. Anyway, I continued my blogging, continued getting the results. I think fundamentally that was a big thing. I was doing a lot of fishing then. I was getting good results in my fishing. I was just steadily getting a name for myself. I was fishing for the Barnsley Blacks by this time. I'd got a sponsorship with Maver. I'd won the Maver Classic. Things were just going well for me. I'd been with Guru when Guru was like very, very much in its infancy. And things were just going well for me. And then one day, I just got a phone call, totally out of the blue. Tom was working for DHP by this point. He was on Pole Fishing magazine. And he just rang me out of the blue and said, "Look, there's an opportunity coming up. Do you want me to put your name forward?" One of the lads is leaving, Mark Williams. He says, "Do you want me to put your name forward?" And of course, me being like a 20-something-year-old, I was only 21, I think, at the time, certainly 22. And he sort of said, "I could put your name forward and I think you've got a good chance of getting this job just based on the stuff you've done on the blogging site." And I thought, do you know what? Yeah, I do. You know, I was working, like I say, as an electrician, helping my dad. But the reality was I wasn't really, it's not what I'm meant to do. I wasn't meant to be an electrician. I know that sounds cheesy, but I wasn't. It's just not, that wasn't me. As much as I enjoyed all that work and I enjoyed working with my dad and stuff, that's not what I was, just wasn't for me. I was desperate to get into fishing, and this opportunity came up, and I had this very difficult chat with my dad saying, "Look, I've been offered this," not offered because I had to still go through the interview phase, but I've been given the green light to maybe go and interview for this job. Is it something that at the end of the day, I was in business with my dad, so it's a big life change, isn't it? I lived with my dad, worked with him, we're in business together. It's like big change. So, and my dad just said yeah, and he always said, if you can get out of the building industry, you've got to do it, and do it well. You know what I mean? Like, not just like get out of it and go and be a bin man. He means, like, no disrespect to bin men, but go out and find something that you actually love. And so that's what I went down for the interview. I think Dave Harrell might have called me because Dave Harrell was the editor then of Match Fishing magazine, and it was because it was on Match Fishing magazine, which is a magazine that I used to save my dinner money to buy it, and I used to buy all the magazines because that's one thing that I'll get onto in a little bit. I was an addict for angling media. I used to buy all of Brian Gay's V2V DVDs about Will Raisin and all that. I used to buy all the magazines. I used to buy every weekly. I used to take in every bit of media I could. So for me, it was like, oh my God, this is like the true dream, getting to work on Match Fishing magazine. I arranged to go for an interview down at DHP, which was in Daventry. Now, I'm from Knaresborough, so Daventry is like, whoa, that's a long way from me. Certainly 3 hours. And off I went with my suit, which in hindsight, I was probably 2 sizes too big for me. And the funny thing was, I've told this story before, but my dad races pigeons, and I actually took my dad's pigeons down for the interview and let them go in the DHP car park. Now, I've gone into DHP. I've never worked in an office environment before or anything like that. I've always been on building sites and sewage pumping stations and stuff like that. And I've gone into the DHP office. Obviously, they must have liked me. They'd read my blogs. Obviously, John and Tom were keen to get me on the team. Dave seemed to be keen as well. As soon as I got there, Dave seemed to be keen. We had a great interview, went out for a little bite to eat, and lo and behold, I got offered the job. Now, of course, this is where the hard bit starts, because I got offered the job. All of a sudden, I've got to tell my dad and my family that I'm moving, because you can't travel from Knaresborough to Daventry. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anyone down there other than the lads that I'd be working with. I had nowhere to live. And it was all like, whoa, oh my God, here we go. I'd just been sponsored by Maver. That had to stop because obviously you can't have a sponsorship and be on the magazines. It was just like a whoa, like a whirlwind. Anyway, I decided to start straight away. I thought, sod it. Fortunately, and like I keep saying, Tom was there for me on this situation because I had to use a camera. I'd never used a camera before. I had to use a Mac computer, which is second nature for me now, but I didn't even know how to turn one on. And I've just got chucked in at the deep end, to be honest. Like I said, leaving home, I'd never been to university or or anything like that, so I'd never lived away from home. And I just threw myself in. Luckily, Tom was there to help me and guide me through it. I ended up living with Tom and another lady called Susan, who we used to lodge off. We used to lodge a room. I think I was meant to be there for 6 months and ended up being there for a year or something, me and Tom, until Tom ended up buying a house and we moved in together there. But it's, yeah, and those early days were a real eye-opener because all of a sudden you've got this, I'm starstruck. I've never been starstruck actually. That's wrong. I don't mean that. I mean because I was going out with people that I knew anyway. Because obviously I fished with all my peers for a long time. I've been in the same team as a lot of them. I know a lot of them. Obviously, I think a few of them have quite a bit of respect, and likewise. So I was getting to film and fish with my mates basically, and the best in the world. So it was perfect. But I remember it was all like, oh my God, I've got to like learn how to do this now. I've got to put my big boy pants on and get on with it. And I found the camera work. I found the writing all right. I found that was not too bad. But the camera work was a challenge to start with. Pat McInnes, who now works for Leader and Map, was a big help for me at the time. He's a very good cameraman, but he's very technically minded, which probably didn't work for me because I'm not technically minded when it comes to cameras at all. I know how to make them work, but I don't necessarily know the technicalities or the finer details or anything like that. I just sort of John Arthur was probably a better help for me because he taught me how to make it happen rather than the technical details, if that makes sense. And Tom the same. Tom doesn't have any technical details with it or technical knowledge, but he knows how to use the camera. And very quickly, we sort of got into a nice little routine. I was going out doing a lot of the features. Granted, they were quite basic at the time, but we were getting somewhere. We were getting somewhere with the camera work. My writing was improving. David Haynes, who was a big influence throughout my career, was a massive help. Obviously, DHP had a big team then, and they had a house style that you had to follow in terms of grammar and spellings and how you would write things. And David was a massive help for me. He could see that I had a bit of talent when it comes to writing, but it just needed refining. That all sort of came crashing down a little bit actually when Dave Harrell shocked us all. We were at Gold Valley on a Club Angler of the Year match, and he says, "I'm leaving. I've handed my notice in," and they've actually accepted because I think he was hoping that he'd maybe get more money or something like that. But he was like, "No, I'm going to go and set up my own thing." And fair play, Dave's made a great success of his float business. But all of a sudden we were in limbo. We had no editor of Match Fishing magazine, and I'd been there for not long at all, 6 to 8 months I think at the time. Fortunately, we got Alex Bones in as editor, and me and Alex had a great working relationship for a number of years. And it was just all about cruising at this point. We were just regularly putting out the content because you've got this deadline to hit. Getting to go out and film, photograph all these amazing anglers. Honestly, that little period, I was living with Tom. I just met Amy, who's now my wife. I was fishing all the time. I was doing what we wanted to do in terms of work. It was a great time of my life. Fishing took a little bit of a backseat when I met Amy, I'm not going to lie. Obviously, the one thing that I'll touch on a little bit later in the video is how working in fishing has an impact on your own fishing. It doesn't happen to everyone, but it happens to a lot. And it happened to me for a brief spell. And that was my little wobble at that early stage of my relationship with Amy. But I was living with Tom and Matt. Matt moved down at this point. So we were living a dream. It was like young lads doing everything they want to do. It was fantastic. And yeah, it was good times, that was. It was real good times. It wasn't long, though, that I realised that print, I think it will always be here. Print will always, it's always a mainstay of media, isn't it? And I think it'll always be here in some form or another. But I'd had this passion for video content for a long, long time. Like I say, I used to buy all of Brian Gay's DVDs. I used to watch stuff. I was just fascinated by it. right from probably like watching like Fish for a Quid with Keith Arthur back in the day, passion for angling. I had a real passion for that side of things, and I could see where it was going. And I took the decision to take a loan out, buy myself my own Mac, buy myself my own camera kit. And I thought, do you know what? In my spare time, I'm going to learn how to become a video editor. I'm going to learn how to put videos together. We had Dave Wesson, who was doing a good job of that at the magazine at the time. And I thought, do you know what? That is where the future is for my career. I could just see what was coming. And Tom and Matt and Alex they wanted to do it, but they didn't see it as important. But I thought, do you know what? I need to do this. I need to that's the next step. So I took the time to, like I say, I took I think it was a 10 grand loan out to buy all the kit I needed. So it was a considerable investment. I mean, I guess it's paid off now, but at the time it was a bit like, I'm throwing myself in at the deep end. But I thought, this is before I had kids or anything. So if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. DHP weren't interested in buying all the kit and stuff. So I've got to do this for myself. And touch wood, it was the best thing I ever did. Now, it took a long time for me. Like I said, I was doing it in my spare time. What I used to do while I was out filming, I was out shooting a magazine feature, which was just a series of stills and accompanying words, I would get a bit of footage. I would either do it on my phone or I'll do it with my own cameras and piece stuff together. And actually on my channel that you're watching this on now, there's some of my very early stuff. There was stuff with Ahmed Jawad, there was stuff with Adam Rooney. I think there's an Adam Rooney one that hasn't even got any sound because YouTube copyrighted it or whatever. But I've left them on there as a bit of a reminder to myself how far I've come. And I could see what I needed to do, but I just had to learn how to do it. And I just decided to pursue it, and I ended up working as video. I think I was doing like match fishing live, which was my concept, which was obviously live matches are everywhere now. But I'd like to think that I was one of the first to do that on film. We did the match fishing live series. It was one of the first, and it was a paid for show. And I went out with Rob Wotton, did the first ever one. I did some with Lee Kerry. I did quite a few anglers, and it was really popular actually. And it made me realise I could do this. I was doing this match fishing live with the Pole Fishing Plus. There was obviously Think Fishing with Des Ship, but I didn't get as involved with that. There was Feeder, which was a dedicated e-magazine / video that was with Steve Ringer, like a dedicated Steve Ringer one. And it was good. We had these little, like 3 or 4 little projects that were quite good. They had, quite a lot of subscribers, and it was going quite well. Alex had long gone by this point. He'd gone to pursue his career in motor racing. Tom and Matt had taken over Match Fishing magazine, and were doing a great job. And then the bombshell came that Matt and Tom were leaving. Now, Matt and Tom went for an interview with Guru. Matt obviously went to Guru. Tom didn't. It wasn't for him. And Tom decided that he would hang around for a bit at DHP because obviously he loved it as well. And then he wanted obviously a replacement for Matt. But unfortunately, DHP weren't in a financial position at the time to be able to do it. And it just sort of, I think it upset Tom, the fact that they were trying to make him, I want to say like belittling his job a little bit, that he could do what he'd been doing on his own, and he just wasn't prepared to do that. He wasn't prepared to lower his standards to try and get the magazine out that he was doing, because him and Matt lived and breathed it. And he knew that without Matt helping him, it would be hard to keep doing what he was doing at the level he was doing. So fair play to Tom, he just decided to walk away from it. A good paying job. Editor of Match Fishing magazine was a well paid job at the time, and he just walked away from it. And he went off to start off what is now Catch More Media, and he's had a great success in doing that. But I owe Tom an awful lot. He gave him a start on Fishing for Fun. He gave him a start at DHP. He was certainly the one who identified me as a potential candidate anyway. And then I lived with Tom. It was a mentor to me, was Tom, and I really, I get emotional thinking about it because they were great times in my life, and Tom is probably the #1 person who was responsible for that. So thank you very much, sir, and we need a pint soon at some point. But anyway, with Tom now gone, all of a sudden we didn't have an editor of Match Fishing magazine, and Pole Fishing magazine didn't have an editor. We got Jake Fowles in at this point. He'd come in as an editorial assistant. working across 2 magazines, I think. And it was like, well, who do we get? Do we get someone outside in? And then Sean O'Driscoll, who was the MD at the time, called me into his office and said, look, I want to offer you the editorship of Match Fishing magazine. Do you want it? And I literally, he hadn't even finished his sentence, and I said, yes, of course I did. It was my dream. It was what I wanted to do right from being young. You know, that position of editor of Match Fishing magazine held so much, like, I held that position in such high regard ever since from being a kid, that I just jumped at the chance. And I had a year of doing it, and it was a fantastic year. Now, I've always been known as someone who, I work very quickly. I'm very good with my time, if that makes sense. Like, if I've got a job to do, I'll get it done quickly, hopefully quite well, but I like to get my jobs done, and then it's time to mess around. Whereas I think other people maybe take the time and meander through to the final result. I don't do that. That's never how I've been done. I like to go for it as hard as I can and get it done. And if that means finishing at 2 o'clock when the end of the day is at 5 o'clock, so be it. That's just how I've always worked. I think it's probably because I used to work to a price a lot when I used to be in building, obviously. You can't get that out of your head when you work into a price and you work into a set schedule. You've got to get the job done. I think I've just carried that over and it's worked well for me. So all of a sudden I'm doing Match Fishing magazine on my own, and I'm getting it done no problem. I'm getting it done well within the deadlines. I'm doing it and I'm finding it, I don't want to say easy because that's disrespectful, but I was finding it quite easy. And I felt like I'd put together a year's worth of really nice magazines. I'd been doing this magazine for quite a while as editor, my dream position. The money wasn't obviously what it used to be. I want to talk about that, like I say, in a separate section. And it was a lot of work. Obviously, they'd let me work from home. This was obviously before working from home was a big thing, because I felt that was a key part of me being so efficient, was the fact that I was working at home with no distractions. The office can gobble your time, as anyone who works in an office knows. I felt like I needed to earn a bit more money. I asked for more money. It didn't happen. They didn't have the money to give me. It was the true answer. Publishing is hard. It's a tough business, and I wanted more money to get in line with what I felt I was worth. So at this time, I was just sort of thinking about how I'm going to earn a bit more money, and frankly decided to leave Preston Innovations. I was just funny how things work out. And I was at Hallcroft that weekend when he'd obviously dropped the bombshell that he was leaving. And I'd drawn just near Mick Viles, who was actually in a management role at Preston at the time. And I sort of went up to have a chat with him. I always get set up pretty quick. And I went up and had a chat with him, and he was asking who I thought would be a good fit for their role, because obviously he respected my opinion. And I just said, look, maybe we could have a chat. Something that maybe I'd look to do. Obviously the editor role I'd held that in the highest regard, but the reality is it's very much a grind, and it probably didn't have the same clout as it once did. The money certainly wasn't there like it once was. And the monotony of producing a magazine I'd been there for nearly 10 years, was starting to wear thin. And he said, oh, let's get you in then for an interview. Obviously I'd got quite a lot of video knowledge by this point, and video experience. And I went in and I was expecting, not to get this job, because I thought there'd be some other candidates and stuff. But lo and behold, they offered me the job. Not there and then, but certainly after a few days. It was actually the same money that I was on at DHP. However, there was bonuses, there was other incentives, there was a wage rise structure, and it was working for Preston Innovations, who are one of, if not the biggest brand in the country. And I said yes, and it was a tough decision leaving Match Fishing magazine. That was probably one of the toughest decisions I've had. But I felt like the time was right for a change. I needed to change, and as I'd said earlier, I sort of set myself up to go into this video role. That was the next step for me. Doing that full time, and I went into Preston Innovations, and I had 3 great years at Preston Innovations. I really enjoyed it. Obviously we had the COVID time, which I felt like was the trickiest time of my career, because I can't even get out to do my content, which I know in the grand scheme of things is not the important factor, is it, when COVID was around. So it was a terrible time. But obviously when you're in this like hamster wheel of getting content out, we had to get creative, and that's when we did the stuff with Day Ship over Zoom and on YouTube, those Q&As. And I still get people to this day thanking me for those, because it gave people content, weekly content, during that time when there wasn't a lot going on. And I think we probably was a bit like trailblazing at that time. So it was real nice, that was a good time. That was, again, a nice little spell. And I had some great times with Press Innovations. But there was this clear shift. Obviously, we're moving into product promotion now. I'd always been about the fishing, and all of a sudden we've got this corporate backstory where we've got to make money. And it sort of changed. Obviously, you're starting to go down. Every time there's a new product launch, you've got to film the products. You've got to promote them in the best possible way, as well as trying to encourage and inspire people to go fishing. Very difficult, and I really enjoyed my time at Preston. But during that time, actually, there was a buyout. The guys who own Matrix, Fox, bought it out, a company called Rather Outdoors. And I could see a shift from what was happening. I could see it happening. It was becoming more corporate. Not that that's a bad thing. It was becoming more structured. Rather have a very set way of how they like to do things. And I've always been a bit of a shooting from the hip kind of guy, just sort of let's come up with something per product and that. But that's not how they do things. They have a formula and it works. It works. God, it works. But you can see it now over Matrix, Preston, Coram, Avid, Fox. Every video's got a similar sort of style. Every product release has got the same style. Even the thumbnails on YouTube look the same. It's a very, very structured way of doing things. And I just wasn't enjoying that. And I could see it was getting more and more. I could, people were moving roles, and it wasn't for me. I like freedom, and not that they don't get freedom, and I'm sure they're a great employer, and I'm sure that the lads there are very happy, but I could just see that this new way of working was coming in. And Mick actually had lost they'd sort of moved Mick on. He was an agent for Preston for years and years, and they moved Mick on, and he went and obviously worked full time on Nufish then. And we were just chatting one day, and he's like, I need a media guy. And he sort of said, would you be interested? And of course, Nufish are not as big as Press Innovations. But I just thought, do you know what? And he sold it to me. Obviously, Mick's a great salesman. He won't mind me admitting that. But the way he sort of said things, it was almost like Press Innovations in the beginning. Family business, a small team, very much up and coming brand, with a bit of risk as well. It's not gonna be like Press Innovations where everything you release is a smash hit. It's gonna have some bumps in the road. But there was something about that opportunity to go and work for Mick and Nufish and Darren that it just turned me on. I just thought, do you know what? I can get out of this corporate sort of setting back into how I like to work, rough and ready. Get your hands dirty, get stuck in, and it really, really excited me. And it took a lot to get away from Preston, because by now I'd had a few pay rises. I was on a good wage, but managed to get that sorted with Mick and Nufish, and it was, what a move that's been. So I've been at Nufish now it'll be 2 years this December, and I can honestly say it's the happiest I've ever been in my working life. I get a lot more flexibility. The guys I work with are very much, we're all swimming in the same direction, if that makes sense. We're all heading for the common goal. We all have proper debates about stuff. We're on the phone all the time. It feels like we're at the beginning of something that's going to get massive. And I think we are. I think the response we're getting to our content is fantastic. The response we're getting for our products is fantastic. Everything about Nufish is, we're going places. The numbers are great. Everything's great. It is the best I've felt at work since the early days at DHP. It's exciting. The work I'm doing with the videos is good. People seem to like it. I cannot say enough good things about my time at Nufish so far, and long may it continue. So I guess what you're all thinking is, how would I get into this line of work if I was to start again? Young anglers out there all the time are thinking about getting into fishing. I get messages all the time from young lads and young girls who want to get into fishing, like media, content creation, product development. How would I go about it? Well, the first is We've all got one of these days, the old mobile phone, and they shoot fantastic video. If you want to get into video content creation, get yourself a portfolio. There's free editing software, there's so much information on YouTube on how to put together a good video. There's so much information on how to edit. There's free software to do it on now. You don't have to do like I did and take out a 10 grand loan to start. Get something going on your phone. Get used to talking in front of camera, because you're going to be put on camera. Get used to filming and editing and make it second nature, because even if it's not fishing that you end up going and working in media, those skills will set you up for other areas of life, whether you are in building, construction. If you set up your own joinery business and you can do a little bit of video editing on the side to showcase your work in a nice way, who knows, that could catapult your joinery business into the next level. Or it could be anything. So it's time and effort well spent. So that would be my number one thing. Learn how to write, because writing is not going away. Always helpful. I don't mean learn how to write as in with a pen. I mean learn how to structure a nice story or a feature. Learn how to edit and learn how to take a few pictures and learn how to shoot a bit of video. Use your phone and go from there. And if the bug catches you, then start thinking about applying for jobs. I see a lot of people just going for it and saying, oh, I could do it, but it takes a long time, trust me, and it takes a lot of effort. Make that effort. If you're serious about doing it, make the effort. Set yourself up a little YouTube channel. Get posting. Don't worry that nobody's watching it. You're not doing it for that at this point. You're doing it to try and gain experience, try and get comfortable in front of camera, try and get comfortable shooting video. That will hold you in good stead. There's lots of jobs out there, maybe not at this moment, but there's always jobs coming up. There's always people moving. There's opportunities coming up. All of us brands know how important media is and marketing. These jobs will be available for a long, long time. If you are serious about doing it and getting into fishing media, there are jobs available, and there will be jobs available. So it's not like the closed shop brigade like everyone thinks. There's always going to be jobs. So take that time and do it and learn it. That would be my number one bit of advice for any youngsters out there. And it's also, if you do want to go down the sponsored angler route, the best way of getting sponsored as well, if you are a young angler, get yourself a proper media profile. I don't just mean on Facebook, because I've got to be honest, as someone who is looking to sponsor anglers, I barely even look at Facebook for that reason. I'm looking for guys who are pushing themselves on to be a little bit different, getting on YouTube, being like comfortable in front of camera, because that is just as important as your fishing results now. To a brand like us who's looking to sponsor people, we need people who are good in front of camera. So take the time to learn how to do it. It didn't come naturally to me. My first ever video was showing some ultimate direct floats, and you can see me visibly shaking in the video. I was a bag of nerves, but slowly over time I can do this now, where I can sit for half an hour and chat to you guys. It doesn't come naturally to me, but I've made it work. And if I can do it, an introvert who doesn't even like going out and socialising with people, you can do it too. Are there any drawbacks to the best job in the world? Not many would be the answer. I get to do some great stuff. I get to go to some amazing places. It is the dream job. But it is very much a lifestyle job. And what do I mean by that? It is very much a lifestyle in the fact that I'm never going to be a millionaire. I'm never going to be rich. I'm never going to have the biggest house on the street. Just that the money just isn't there. Don't get me wrong, I get paid a lovely salary. It's great, it's fantastic. I live a very comfortable life. I've got no complaints whatsoever with what I get paid. But if your ambition is to be driving around in a Range Rover and living in a 5-bedroom like detached house somewhere on the best part of your town, going into this style of work probably isn't the best route to that. You're probably going to want to go into something else. But if you want a job that gives you a lot of lifestyle satisfaction in the fact that you're outdoors all the time, or you're working with anglers and your passion truly is fishing, this is definitely a job you should consider. The other downside is almost fishing overexposure. Now, like I said, in my early times, 2012, 2014, when I first met Amy, that was a real thing. And I've seen it with a lot of people. You know, Dave Owl goes fishing more now. He's not swallowed up by it, but at the time he was barely going fishing. Alex was barely going fishing. Tom and Matt were exceptions to the rule, but I've seen like Dave Wesson, he was world champion and pretty much gave up fishing. There's numerous cases across the industry where people get into it with the intention of kicking on their fishing, and it ends up not being that, because you can't just keep talking about float patterns and tackle. You have to have a break, and sometimes that means that your break comes at the weekends. So just be prepared. If you are serious about doing this, it might impact your fishing. Not everyone's like Tom and Matt, who managed to get through that and were keener than ever. Even I had a little dip in how often I was going fishing, and I love fishing more than anybody I know. But it's only natural, in it, and you find your own level. I found a lovely balance now. But yeah, just be mindful of that. So the money might not be what's going to get you to that millionaire status, and it might impact your fishing. Now, what are the positives? Obviously, I get to work in the industry, which I love. It's a lovely collection of people who've been in the industry for years. You all meet up at trade shows and stuff. We have great times. We have a beer and all that. It's great to be part of this little industry, because it is a little industry. It's very rewarding. The fact that you can do something on a product detection line, for instance. Our new line, we really hit that hard with the marketing, and it's been a massive success. It's a great product as well, but obviously the marketing is what gets things moving, and it's very, very satisfying to see a product doing well because of your efforts. It's obviously the fishing. I mean, I'm going out on the River Trent tomorrow with Mick. It's just one of those things. It's very, very rewarding. I love it. I can't recommend it enough, and I think a few more people should try and find a job they love rather than a job that makes them loads of money, because it's led me to have a really good life. I really enjoy my lifestyle. I'll never be rich, but life's too short, isn't it, to worry about things like that. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Just a bit of background into my story, how I got going, my journey through it, how I've ended up where I've ended up now, and what I would do if I was to start up again. So if you enjoyed that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Get in the comments below what you do as a job and what you do as a career, and I'd love to know. But thanks for watching. A bit of a long-winded one, but hopefully there's some little gems and tidbits in there for you guys to enjoy.